expert. I am coming to you live from sunny Southern California. And you guys know, typically on the first Wednesday of the month, we do the Vicki Fitch Live Evict the Bully in Your Head show. But as fate would have it, things were a changing, and Diane and I had to keep rescheduling. So I have a superstar guest, which I'm going to tell you guys all about. I'm going to just read a little bio, but I have to tell you one of my favorite parts of this story that you guys are going to be hearing. And by the way, for those of you who are on iPod, see, I can't even speak today. Diane's such a powerful force of nature. She discombobulates my language. If you guys are listening on iTunes, Stitcher, or Blog Talk Radio, we really appreciate you guys being here. For those of you who are actually live in the audience or able to get over to Facebook or the Get Vocal chat room, you guys can come and see us live and ask some questions, because we're going to be talking about lessons from an undercover prostitute right here. But actually, we're going to be talking, as you guys know, Evict the Bully in Your Head is about turning your trials and tragedies and how you turn them into triumph. And Diane has an amazing story of how she's done that and how she's created her spa life retreats and the Diane Halfman Academy. We've got all kinds of stuff to tell you about, as well as teaching you how to be your own cop. So let me tell you just a little bit about my friend Diane. Diane was an undercover cop for San Diego Police Department, where she experienced a unique perspective of life behind the scenes. Because let's face it, that's kind of a male-dominated field, so we know that some of those things can be a little difficult. She honed her fear and survival instincts. Don't you love that? She honed her fear and survival instincts and knows what it takes to find your grit. Now, many of you know I have grit as a character in one of my books, so Diane and I are going to dive into that as well. She took years of experience along with her master's in human resources and management and her certification as an ultimate game of life coach to pioneer the creation of her own company called Spa Life, which stands for Seek Power Always. As featured in her podcast, Live Your Spa Life, a call to action for all women to define and create the life they truly want. So there's all kinds of stuff for us to talk about. And I'm going to just first of all start off with introducing you to this gorgeous woman. She's not only gorgeous on the outside, and I know those of you who are listening on the radio can't see, she is gorgeous on the inside. She has the heart of a lion, and she's just got a spirit of kindness and love. And I am just honored to be here with you today, Diane. I mean, I absolutely adore you. We've only got to meet in person once, but I feel like you're a kindred sister and a kindred spirit. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Oh, thank you, Vicki, so much for having me on the show. When you and I connected at that Starbucks, we could have been hours together, and just so many stories and so many intersections with both of our lives and in our passion in serving people. It's just, yes, kindred spirit is a good name.
Yeah. And it's like I said, that's what's so fun, is that when we connect with people and recognize the value of what people want and what people say and do, that we get to see how we can make things better. And for those of you guys, by the way, on Periscope, I'm going to try and field some of your questions, but you know how some of these things go. We're going to try and field those questions, but if you guys go to getvokl.com, you can also not only see us, but you can participate in the conversation here. I'm going to try and catch your comments. And as you guys know, I need you to hit that share button, because you do not want to miss the things that Diane's going to share with you today, because it's not all fun, guys. There's some really difficult things in her life that have, created the person that she is today. And you guys know that's what we call profit in the pain. And Diane's a perfect example of that. So Diane, would you take us back in the day when you decided to become a police officer? What is it that inspired you to do that? Why did you go that route? Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I would say that's not really the glamorous part, because it wasn't like I didn't wake up one day and go, I think I want to be a cop, right? Uh-huh. And being the oldest of three, my dad really wanted me to succeed, my mother too. But my dad basically said when I was going into college, are you going to be a doctor or an attorney? As if those were my only choices in the world to choose from. And I wasn't really drawn to medicine. And so, I thought I was a little intrigued by law. So I went and got my degree in criminal justice and was ready to hit the world as an attorney. And my senior year, I started working with an attorney and decided that this wasn't for me. Like, I couldn't be inside doing shepherdizing, which is indexing of cases. And it just felt like a really boring existence for me. And so now it's like, what am I going to do with this law degree? And I had guys that were graduating with me at college who were going on into law enforcement. And they said, hey, they're hiring right now. Why don't you just take the test and see, right? Just see. So, so I took the test and, passed with flying colors. And at the time, they were also looking for a serial killer. There was a serial killer series going on, and there was and they were targeting prostitutes in that. And so not only did I go into the academy within 3 months of taking the test, but I also started doing undercover work to, really lure in this serial killer that was causing havoc along the West Coast. Wow. And so I basically just got exposed on a really deep level. And what's funny about it is that, I went to 12 years of private Catholic school. I had no idea what was happening on the street. I had, talk about being thrown into, especially in something like vice and prostitution. I didn't even know what half the words were that people were asking to solicit me from on the street. So it was definitely a huge learning curve into a whole part of society I knew nothing about.
Wow. Well, okay. I didn't even know that you could possibly get thrown into undercover work when you were barely that's like sending a civilian, right? I mean, you had some training, but like you said, you're young and you're like, hey, let's go. And I love that spirit about you, though. The fact that you were willing to, all right, hey, let's go. And the fact, wait, I'm sorry, did everybody hear that she said they were looking for a serial killer that wanted to meet prostitutes? So, hey, I volunteer. Serial killer, come and get me. That is courageous on a level that is beyond. Honestly, that's so, it's fascinating. And I have to dive a little deeper. So tell me, were you young enough that you just didn't have that fear? You just thought you're gonna, I can't even talk. It's just so amazing.
Well, what's interesting is that, even though I was being poised to be in part of that, we had a program back then where we would go in and out of the academy. So I would spend time in the academy and learning the foundations of that. And then we would go with field training officers and we would go on the street. So there was an ongoing learning and things that happen. And so what happens is, because that went over a period of a year. So it wasn't like just, hey, you're on the street and you're on your own. There was training that happened to prepare for that, to really know what you're doing, and having some guidance and field training officers and things along those lines. Okay. So it wasn't like completely irresponsible on their part of throwing me out there without having training. But what's funny about that is I'd actually never even held a gun before I joined the police department. I talk about having no clue about what that even was like. And but it was wild, because one of the things is that when I was working patrol and in uniform, you have a vest and a gun and a radio, and you have all these tools and resources and backup. But when you're on the street as a prostitute, you are literally wearing almost nothing, from the start. And you don't have a gun, you don't have a radio, you don't have you have no tools on you. And so you really do have to trust.
I just got goosebumps. I'm telling you right now, I'm thinking, oh my gosh. Yeah. It's like a movie when you're going, no, dummy, don't do it. Don't.
Well, and we had a rest team, and we had detectives that were across the street, but there was always that presencing is, would they get to me before somebody else got to me? And so you really had to have some presence about yourself. And it was a way of, talk about building up that courage and that, resilience, and that just trusting in your own inner guidance. And that's one of the things I really am so passionate about, women just trusting their instinct on things, because when you're in a situation where you don't no idea what's going to happen, and this can happen in life and business, you've got to trust that at a deep level, that you're going to be able to make those quick decisions. You're going to be able to be present to what's happening, to have some situational awareness and notice nuances. You really start having an ultra, focus, if you will, of just knowing what is happening in front of you and being present to that anything can happen.
Well, I love that part, because as we've now kind of established, and for people that are just joining us, and again, if you guys are listening on iTunes, Stitcher, or Blog Talk Radio, we totally appreciate you being here. For those of you who are live, thank you as well. You can come to the Get Vocal platform, getvokl.com, and you can actually come live into the room back here and have some comments, and you may even be able to make a cameo appearance. I see Mr. Cliff Bodenweiser is in the house, so welcome here. I see Stacy Lynn Harp is here. I see a bunch of my friends there on Periscope. Periscope as well, although the Periscope app seems to be kind of crashing. It's not showing me who is there, but I appreciate you guys being here. And I promise you, hit that share button and provide people that because we're about to talk about some things that are a little bit tricky, and I'm just so grateful that Diane has the courage and the wisdom to deliver, what she's going to share with you guys today, because it's not easy. Evict the Bully in Your Head is a tough book, right? It's fun and it's funny if you guys have read it, and we do the bubble bump, and make sure that we are safe in our zone. But sometimes we get nudged off course. And many of you know the story of Lisa's love story, and how Lisa got nudged off course and into a relationship that wasn't really supporting her. And Diane has a little bit of a story of some of the things that happened to her with the police department and some transitions that happened to her life that really kind of gave her those grounding, what the heck is going on kind of moments. So Diane, share what you're willing to expose to the audience of how those relationships or things affected you, especially on this hunt for serial killers and different things that all kind of culminated in itself at once.
Right. Well, thank you. There were several things that happened. I mean, I could probably say every day something happened, really, when you look at that kind of work that's happening. But, to set the stage, I was, a single mom. My daughters were really young. And particularly when I was working patrol, in one way I had to show up in uniform and, seen as an officer, and really just people expecting you to save the day and really stand in that courage and making, the best decisions you can in the moment. But also, talk about what's in your head. In, the background in my head was, I needed to make the mortgage payment. I needed to get home to my daughters. Like, they relied on me, and just the things that were going in is like, I have to get home every night. And just the things of just really having to have these discussions in my head about, like, you know what, you can do this. You've been trained. This is going to, everything's going to work out. And just that positive expectancy, but also grounded in reality of what's being forced in front of me, because you just don't know how you're going to react when, I've been shot at, I've had gun pulled at me, I've been in fights on the street, I've had these things happen, where you really do have like your life flashing before your eyes and the type of decisions and things that you are making. But one of the things I know that, you're referring to is, especially I was as a single mom for so many years, that I really did want to be in a relationship. I wanted to create a family with my children and with a significant other. And so I had started dating someone when I was on the department. And, it's just like when I read your story, about Lisa's story, because we talked about this, where it really touched a chord with me about the doubt and the second guessing and the lack of confidence. Is how is it that, as an educated woman who makes decisions for other people every day, can make poor choices for herself in relationship? And how do you actually get there? And then when you're there, how do you dig yourself out of it? Because it feels like an endless loop in what's happening. Right. So I was in a relationship for like 6 years, totally the guy that was like, not only the good looking guy, but he had a young daughter as well. And I really considered her one of my daughters, and just wanting to build that family life. We would have like these summer vacations where we'd go together, and there would be just enough good and fun things to happen, that when the negative things would happen, like him getting his ex-wife pregnant, like him going out with other people, like all these bigger things that, my parents were just distraught over, that I just couldn't see outside of myself, to be like making excuses and, we can get through this, and just that perseverance. Sure. And what was that line between being resilient and making things work no matter what in a relationship, to notice that I had taken myself out of the equation and not really being able to look at what that bigger picture was for me. And you never know what that is going to be. And because, I would put my life on the line, on so many different times, and things that I saw were so horrific on the street, between gang warfare and seeing children die and just all the things that can happen. And it felt like what I was going through wasn't that bad. Right. And so, in the environment that also plays a role in the choices, and just saying, I didn't want to break up the family, and this was like the best choice I could make at the time. And there was just all of these things that I would justify about what that looked like, and isolating myself from my friends, and just really creating a classic bubble of not being able to see that bigger picture. And it really did take my last case, where, a 7-year-old girl was kidnapped and killed, and I was involved in that case. And because I knew her and was so passionate about wanting to find her and be involved in the case, she only lived a mile away from our home. It affected our neighborhood and our family. And I remember being involved in this case. And, my boyfriend at the time had called me, and, I'm working on this case, and he called me, he said, "Hey, what's for dinner? What time are you coming home?" Mm-hmm. And it seems so out of the blue, on like that's the most important thing we're doing. And I just said, I'm kind of involved with this case, not going to be doing that, anytime soon. Right. And he just said, they don't need you on that case. You just want to be on TV. You just want to, you just really totally undermined my work in that, and just said, you just need to come home right now. Mm-hmm. And it's almost as if like the sky parted and life just, paused. And it was almost like just a direct download from God, where it was just like, you're done with this. Right. And it was like, there was like this whole thing that just rolled through. It's like, I don't want me to be this role model for my daughters. It's not what I set up for my life and what I want for myself. I deserve better than this. And I just, in a very calm voice, had just said, you know what? I know you're not going to hear me right now, but we're done. Like, we are completely done. And there was some unraveling and restraining orders and things that happened after that.
Just the restraining orders, no big deal.
Things like that.
Serial killers, prostitution, restraining orders, it's like all in a day's work.
Right. So there was some of that unraveling and things that had happened, during that. And I was getting, my master's program at the time. So I was really building myself up and really building my business, and, really surrounding myself with people that, had my back. And even though they were always there, it's interesting the barriers that we have for ourselves when we start thinking like, if I just did this, or, you start really thinking, I mean, there was even dictation about, what am I wearing and who am I spending time with? And I mean, just all of these controlling aspects that can happen when taken by themselves seem like no big deal.
Exactly. They're just nudges.
Right. And then there was the added part for myself of just the self-doubt and confidence of like, here I am, a police officer, answering domestic violence calls, going to these type of things. And, and there were people, on the department that had said like, hey, do you need some support? People kind of know there's something happened. And I was just like, I got this, and I didn't get the help that I needed. And this, I didn't realize how far down the hole I was, really. And that was the bottom line. I didn't recognize where I landed.
Well, that's what I really want to help you guys. And by the way, thank you so much for being here at the live audience. Those of you that are here, those of you who are listening on the radio, or, listening to us on the different platforms, we appreciate it. If you do want to see the actual interview in person or live, so you can see, again, what a lovely person Diane is, but you can see her reactions, her emotions and stuff in her face. I want you guys can check it out on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Vicki Fitch. This is episode 20 of Evict the Bully in Your Head. You can also see it on my Facebook channel at Vicki Fitch 1. So keep those in mind if you do want to connect, or you want to share this episode out with someone else that will get some value, because we all know someone or have experienced it ourselves that has been nudged off course, that has gotten, like I said, in Evict the Bully in Your Head, I say, the bully didn't come up as a 350-pound linebacker right in front of your face to take you on, just like an abusive relationship, they don't walk up and punch you in the face and say, let's go home. They start out with compliments and kindness. So things get nudged off course. And it's the same thing that happens with our recognition of how we're handling situations. We learn to tough it up. Hey, Jay, welcome to the broadcast. We learn to tough it out. We learn to create different, scenarios in our mind that we've got this, and that's our job to put this, to put this in perspective for other people. And because we end up in that position of trying to secure and help other people, we tend to, like you were saying, Diane, not take care of ourselves. We don't put our own oxygen mask on first. And it starts to eat away at our confidence, and it starts to eat away at our ability to recognize difficult circumstances with other people. We start becoming more judgmental because we think, oh, what is she doing? How in the world can she get stuck there? Because we're trying to, push those things behind us so we don't actually have to look at it. And, you were in a very male dominated field. The police department is heavily male. And so how did you feel in that circumstance? I'm sure there were some people that were lovely, but did you feel out of place sometimes? Did you feel like you didn't have that, you're not going to, hey guys, let's go have a beer. Let me tell you how my life's falling apart.
Yeah, there's so many layers to that. And, one in particular, when I actually, there was actually a get together with my squad before I had started. So I got to see, like their wives and family and all those things before we got going. But one of the things that was really interesting is when I first started working like a graveyard shift, which is, a night shift. And I had my sergeant call me into the office and said, hey, I just want to let you know that I had all the wives say that they don't want you to ride with their husband in the police car. So you're going to have to be a John unit, which means a unit by myself, that I would be riding by myself at night. And even though I'm trained for that, but it was just one of those things and I had, partners in and out throughout my career, but I mostly worked alone. And what was interesting about that is, we expect some of the things from some of the guys, but then it was like from the girls, it was just a really interesting perspective of what that was. And so just the trust of even female relationships were a big, I actually felt kind of more safe with having male relationships. So it took me a while to really embrace some of my sisters and really look at where they were coming from and seeing, what I could do to, have them feel better about things. And that shifted and changed a bit over time. But then there was also, we started having, sexual harassment type training and things that were happening. And they started something where third parties could actually report on your behalf. And so I, at one point in my career, had, again, I feel like I'm being called to the principal's office, but now I have a lieutenant call me to the office saying, hey, by the way, we had like 300 complaints over a certain amount of time of people saying that there was sexual harassment against you. Why weren't any of those you? Like, why didn't you actually come and say anything? And I actually laughed and I just said, I'd be in here every day. And I said, here's the thing. I said, there's a perception of what people may hear out like in the public of something that somebody may say, and they may take it a certain way. But one of the things I feel that really had me survive like in this work, and it wasn't about justifying other people's behavior, was my perception of what, people would say. I didn't take it personally. And I truly do believe that everyone's doing the best that they can. And one of the things that I believe that, law enforcement and I think also, military and fire, when you see the worst of society, you tend to have a bit of a warped sense of humor to get through it, to make sense of it, to, compartmentalize it. And, you can't see the things that we see day in and day out and not have it affect you at a way that you have to be able to let off that steam and be able to say something. And I'm not saying to you, and I also knew the line, and I was okay, calling somebody, on like, hey, that's a little too far or whatever. And I was strong enough in that, but, little off comments or whatever, it was just like, in the scheme of what we were dealing with, I knew it wasn't really directed towards me. It was really about what they were experiencing and going through. And I think keeping that perspective, I think it's important to look at that when somebody says something in a certain way, it's really more about them and what's going on in their head than really having anything to do with me.
Yes, and definitely. And I completely agree, because that it is. I mean, that's why, we talk about peek behind the curtain. When you get to see what's going on, some of those people, and I think you probably remember that two of the characters in there are Captain Confidence, right? And his twin brother Cockiness. And I've seen, and I don't want to stereotype police officers in any way, shape, or form, because I know some absolutely fabulous ones, but you can definitely, besides you, girlfriend, that there are some that they're overcompensating and they become cocky to try and represent and just show up. And like I said, when those guys mouth off, usually it's just them trying to make themselves feel better. And for me, I typically feel sorry for them. Now, if they're in a position of authority over me, that can be a different kind of, situation, right? That can be a problem.
Right.
And, when, we have trolls that come in and try and objectify us in shows and do stuff, it doesn't matter because we don't know them. When you're working with somebody every day and you have, and you have their wives calling and say, I don't want my husband working with her. It's hard to take that as a compliment because that is a compliment in its own way because they're jealous because you're beautiful. But it's, as a woman, we are very relational. And so for someone to judge us on a stereotype or judge us from an outer package hurts, because it's like we want to be liked. You don't have to like us, and we'll leave you out in the stranger zone, in the bubbles, right? But we want to be friends. We want to connect with other women. And so, did you find that as a whole, besides just those officers' wives, did you find it as a whole that other people kind of stayed back from you because you were the police, because you were tough, because you were, do you feel like that impaired some of your relationships with women?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I mean, even, I would play like, at the time they used to have like, card games on the block and get the women together and, all the soccer moms and all the people, doing that in the neighborhood that I raised my daughters in. A lot of the moms, didn't work. And so, it was all about their kids. And, it was just interesting where as I got older, I kind of found out that they really wanted to connect with other couples, right? So they wanted to have like another couple. So to have a single woman come over to their house, again, it was kind of another thing where it was like, they didn't want me around their husband, and it was like a thing. So I just learned to either have single friends or I was working. I was actually working a lot of overtime as well. So I wasn't so much in relationship building, type thing. But I did actually end up having a female partner at one time. She used to be a 6-foot Swedish model, and we were called the Blonde Squad. And
I love it.
We actually got a lot of fun things done, and we, there was definitely the whispers and complaints that how come they got to have these assignments or, different type, when we worked undercover.
They're going to complain, right? They're going to complain that you can't work with
no
them.
matter what, there's going to be
a part. I mean, it's like, yeah, okay, just move on.
It's just like every way you look at it. And I just was like, you know what? I'm just going to do the best that I can in this and, really look at it from a different perspective. And I just always made a point of trying to make it fun. Right. And I know for some people that, they would look at it as, you need to be more serious about this. And, I think some people just how they showed up to the calls really set the tone for how they would be and how that would look like. And, I worked a pretty heavily, gang area, and I would start listening to their music. And I would like, even when we're arresting them and taking them downtown, it's like, you want to come in my car and listen to good music and go downtown, or you want to go in their car?
Yeah. Like here, you got to pick because it's not a pretty day for you, but at least we're going to try and give you something good.
Right. Exactly right. And because we ended up being like more approachable, people would, confess to all kinds of stuff to us because they wanted to tell us what was happening and what was going on. And so, there's just definitely different ways to approach the same way of how we're doing things and what they look like. And, I really look at that we all have some form of victim experiences, especially as women, with different aspects, what you have, and it's how we really interpret those and how we look at them and how we choose we're going to be going forward. And that you can have a victim experience, but not walk around in the world as a victim. And it's a huge distinguishing thing is that, if we're talking about standing in, our courage and being confident and doing the things and not have fear in the world in what we're doing, you actually have to do it, right? I mean, you can say it, but you actually need to step into those things and have those things happen.
Absolutely.
And one of the things I'm really passionate about is, in fact, one of my talks, I'm actually wanting to speak more to corporations, because in this, era of Me Too, as I think that there's like one part of that component. And I think it's great that, the women are talking about things that are happening to them and they're having the discussion. But I believe the next level of movement is the not me. that's setting the boundaries that this is not happening to me again, or that's not going to happen going forward. And it's an energy of who you're being in the world and how you really can, learn how to be, strong and safe and be seen, and then have that fierceness about you, but still have your femininity, because, we all know about the whole, the stereotypes around, like, if you're too dominant in your power, it's really about, well, she's a biatch, right?
Right.
And all these type of things, where it's like, it doesn't have to be that way. And I love how the definition of power, especially feminine power, I really believe that's shifting, where it's more of a collaborative experience. It's more of really bringing who you are to that. And I think that that's the next step of that evolution of, we talk about what's happening in our head. Sometimes we're waiting for somebody else to give us permission to be that leader, to be courageous. And when we really just start shifting how we think about those things and step into that leadership and bring people with us, then we're not so isolated, and we can really look at things from a much different perspective. And I really see a movement of things shifting in that direction when we choose it.
Yeah. And I think when we choose it is the important part, because so many people are, I don't want to say they're victimizing themselves, but I think that sometimes that people are getting caught in how do I put that? They're getting caught in the wave of other people creating drama around their situation. I mean, granted, there are some really big things, and I want to talk about those in just a second, but there are some things that are less big, right? Like the guys making a comment maybe about you, like you're pretty, or like, oh, hey, hot mama. Okay, so maybe some people are very offended by that. I personally don't get offended by those kind of things, right? But I don't blame other people if they do. I just think that the 300 comments that were turned in on your behalf were sometimes people dramatizing something to try and make a point that, and again, those of you who are participating in things like that, I'm not condemning you. I'm not judging you. I have no idea what the circumstances are, and I can't look behind your curtain. I can just say people that I do know that I've watched go through some of these things, they turn it into, drama island, right? Where there's so much going on that isn't about the issue, or it's not about, do you really want an answer? Like, because, you could have asked him, hey, why did you call her Blondie? And he might said, oh, because that's, she reminds me of my mom or my sister, and that's her nickname. And it's like, oh, right. And like, oh, all of a sudden first we're calling you that, like, or maybe they call you Barbie, right? Because you're blonde and are beautiful. And so you're, oh yeah, it's my sister's name. All of a sudden, like, when you put things in context, that they're no longer offensive, but yet people like to build up and dramatize. And so, I believe that it takes powerful women, powerful men, powerful people to share about that sometimes happening, with the real reality that some people could chastise and then start attacking, what we believe. And we just have to be strong enough to do that. And when I watch you, and when I heard some of your other stories, which I want to get into, because I want to talk about where you really had to make a transition, where you emotionally were challenged, and where we turned those trials into your triumph, because you're such a triumphant woman now. You have so many things going, and you were doing great then, but you allowed those transitions to turn. And there was a catalyst there, that, that case that made you second guess, that made you uncomfortable, that brought you anxiety and anguish. And I would like for you to share, what you went through and how you came to be, to decide that you were going to step into that power and start sharing it with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you referring to Danielle with the case with that? Yeah. So, I went through so many different cases, with the department, and, I usually, it seemed easier when they were anonymous, right? When they were people that I didn't know who they were. And when I found out that, Danielle had been taken, and, I had just saw her the week before, she was sitting on the counter, stirring, making cookies with her mom, and just, this young, bright face, right? And I can remember it like it was yesterday. And I played softball with her mom, and, it was just one of those things in the neighborhood. And we are in, a fairly nice, middle class neighborhood, and they had like alarms on the house. They had a dog. I mean, all the things you would think, your child is tucked away in their bed.
Right.
And just the whole idea that someone can actually get into your home and take your child out of her bed in your home, it's such a, hard thing to even think about.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really, not only spurred the community on to, go and, she was gone for 3 weeks. And we just, to find her and to really rally up people to want to do something about it. And just the whole looking at my daughters, just the looks in their eyes of like, could we be next? And here you are as a police officer again, like, how can you not protect your own neighborhood? There's literally a murderer on the loose in your neighborhood. And it really brought it really back home, and just how that just rocked how I looked at my life, and really how it's why I got out of my relationship that wasn't working. It was how I really wanted to be more present for my daughters, and really knowing I was here for something bigger than what was happening. And, really it was really tough going through that case, because it was a year of being at trial. The perpetrator who was convicted was the neighbor next door. It's just all of these things that add up that you think is safe in your world and that you're doing all the right things. And it just really rocked all the sense of safety that was happening in that. And so going through that, the trials, and just exhaustion, right? Just deep mental and physical exhaustion of what was happening. And, we didn't even get into, I shattered my gun hand in a training accident. And so I was transitioning out of retiring in the department, and that's how I became the liaison between the department and the family, as I was transitioning out in my retirement from the department. So I was really looking at all different aspects of my life of what am I doing next in not only my relationship, but my career. And it just felt like everything was kind of blowing up in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
And so there was somebody that had donated for myself and, the mother and a couple other ladies to go to a place called Canyon Ranch in Tucson, Arizona. And I'd never been to a place like this before. And it was this, resort health spa that we were there for a week. And it was so amazing that we were taking care of ourselves, that we were being fed, we were having spa services, we were hiking, we were getting sleep. And what was so amazing is when you take care of yourself, and it was a beautiful location on so many different levels, and you actually feel fed, right? And not just, physically, mentally, spiritually, making the shift in that. We were having some really high level conversations in the evening, and the mother, Brenda, was instrumental on wanting to help other children be safe, and had actually changed things in legislature. And there's something called the Amber Alert, like when somebody is missing right away, and all of these things were very instrumental, that spurred out of what happened with Danielle. And so really looking at, because I was in this location, I had somebody, I actually had a mentor of mine who had asked me, like, if you could do anything in the world, no, time and money wasn't an issue, what would you be doing? And I, out of the blue, said I'd be living the spa life. And what that was, it wasn't just getting a one-off massage. It was when you really filled yourself up and you took care of yourself, that it was from that overflow that you were going to be able to have impact on other people. And that got further, distilled into the spa, and spa life was for seek power always, that it was that power within you that actually drove you, that really relying on your intuition, relying on that inner knowing that we have. There's so much knowledge we can get out in the world, and second guessing ourselves and really looking at that. But it's so important at the end of the day to really trust between yourself and your maker, or your knowingness, or whatever that is, to listen, to give yourself the space for that. And that was really a pivotal point in my life, was I was looking at so much outside of myself, of really seeing like all these things that were outside of me, and really not giving myself the time of what I really wanted and how I could have impact and how I could really serve and help people. And I continually have to go back in that for myself over and over again, of like, okay, if I'm feeling overwhelmed or I'm feeling anxious or things happening, I kind of made the acronym of kind of like the bad cop, good cop. And if I was in the bad cop mode of the COP, that was confusion, overwhelm, and procrastination. When I was in that, when I was in that, things weren't working,
Uh-huh.
right? And I had to go back to center, like what was true for me and what was happening for me, and listening to that as a driver in the world. If I was looking at good cop, the COP, that was the confidence, optimism, and power,
Mhm.
and standing in that. And that at any moment we could choose. And that's the bully in the head part,
Mhm.
where we could go either way with it. And so in that choosing is what makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
And one of the things I noticed when I was on the department, I took a lot of police reports on women who had violence against them.
Mhm.
And one of the things that came up on every report that I had written was that the women, at some point before they were violated, had some sort of inner knowing that something was going to happen, or something that didn't feel right, and that they wished that they would have taken a girlfriend with them to the bathroom, that they wouldn't have turned down a certain street, that they
Right.
wished that they would have done. There was something that came up, and it's not to make those women wrong,
Mhm.
or they're, re-victimizing them in any
Sure.
way, but it's really a powerful moment. Is, what are the times when we know what's right for us,
Right.
and maybe we didn't want to make waves because there were other friends, or it would have been
Right.
weird to yell, or whatever those things that we say or do. But when we shut down our voice
Mhm.
and we don't allow ourselves to speak our truth,
Mhm.
we start getting off track. And these are when these things happen. And, there's a lot of things that maybe just couldn't have been prevented, no matter how you look at it. But again, that's like a victim experience
Mhm.
versus walking in the world as a victim going forward, and trusting that we actually know more than we actually give ourselves credit for.
Well, I agree with that. And I think one of the things that we need to bring up here is that something that's not often addressed in a way that I think in Evict the Bully in Your Head, I talk about, the bubbles, right? And then one of the things we talk about is a bubble predator, and that I call him Uncle Ichabod. And I think that there's a lot of children that grow up to be adults that have issues that are pensive, and they're worried about different circumstances. But as a child, I talk about my circumstance, and it was, the portion of that is called give grandpa some lovin', right? And my grandpa used to always, I had a step grandfather, and he would always say, come give grandpa some lovin'. And he gave me the heebie jeebies, right? And I didn't know why. I just couldn't take it. Now, I was a very
Right.
friendly kid. I always hugged people and sat on their laps. So the fact is, now as an adult, to recognize there's an instinct, and that parents, we have to start listening not only to our own instincts but to our children, and stop
Right.
worrying that someone else might think your children are rude or spoiled when they say, no, I don't want to do that. Now, if you know your child's being rude or spoiled, you got to work with them on a different issue. You
Right.
can't allow, I can't, I say can't, I don't mean can't. I recommend that you start listening to them, because it's better to be wrong that your child was being spoiled, or it's better to be wrong than for something to happen to your kid. And in my
Right.
personal circumstance, I stayed away from my grandpa as much as I could, and we didn't find out till many years later that he used to try and get my sister to pose nude for him. And this is when we're 5 and 6 years old. It's just,
Yep.
it's it's disturbed, and there's something that's wrong there, that we have to give our voice, we have to speak up, and we have to educate other people to speak up too, and to, like you're saying, Diane, there's an instinct. Use your instincts, trust your instincts, trust your children's instincts, and work on them. If they have an attitude, if they're picky eaters, work on their picky eating. Don't work on their picky people. Make
Yeah.
sure that you're giving them that voice, because we're conditioning them for whether or not they're going to be believed later. And I think it's
Right.
really important, and that's one of the reasons I do that You Are Enough campaign in the schools. And I'd love to do stuff with the police officers too, because you already know, you watch people that have been put down enough, where their self-esteem has been challenged enough, where they some of them just give up, right? I mean, they just like, yeah,
Yeah.
this is no, oh no, I'm not pressing charges, because then he'll kill me, or I'm not going to press charges, or she'll do something to me when nobody's looking, and nobody believes that I am a big man, and that this woman is doing things to me, because it's stereotypes. And we have to
Right.
start, like I said, sharing and being honest, and recognizing those things.
Right, right. Well, and just, to be aware of your surroundings, and who is reaching out for some support, and really noticing the signs, and who is willing to, make a shift and change and get out of their circumstances. I didn't share with you, Vicki, just, last week I was coming on a plane back from an event, and there was a woman and her two small children in the airport. And I usually don't talk to people in the airport. I'm usually just kind of do my own thing and just kind of connect with who I'm with. And there was just something that was having me connect with her and her children. And I come to find out that she was on the run, literally from a domestic violence. She was getting on a plane to leave her situation.
Wow.
And it was just like, wow. I mean, I totally could just see where she was at. And there was another woman on the plane who had fled her circumstances, and we connected with her. And I had given her my card, and I just said, she was headed to a shelter. She'd gotten a restraining order. She had things in order, and she's going to be fine, but it's just one of those things, like, you're going to a city you don't really know anything about. And I just said, you know what, have my number.
Yeah.
Just have it there. Who knows when or how you may need it or something to happen. But this is part of like a bigger sisterhood that happens. And I come to find out that, the circle kind of got around to another friend of mine. Twice a year, I have a clothing swap where we just had over this weekend, and we exchange clothes within our friends. And then everything that no one chooses, we donate to a women's shelter. And one of the things that had come back was somebody had mentioned, like, hey, there was this woman who was on a flight. Let's give some extra clothes to her. I'm like, I was on that flight. That was the woman I met. It's such a small world and a God moment that puts people in your life, that when you're ready to receive that support and those things happen. And, she came over with her kids, and, we really, helped her just move to the next level. And the best part of it about it was she's like, you know what, I have some faith of being around some positive women who I know I'm going to be okay. Right. Just to know that it's like, someone actually cares enough to say or do something. And I'm not always that proactive about that. Right. I mean, it's so easy to be in our bubble and what that looks like, but there's something about when you actually speak to another person and you hear their story, that we are so much more alike than we are different. And to really just know that even if it's just energetically, that we are just opening up, that's a safe world, that there's people that have your back, and it's that positivity that we have walking into the world. It makes a huge difference, even if you're just not talking to somebody. If you're that person that actually just smiles to a stranger, it's maybe the only smile they get that day.
Sure.
There's things we can do.
Absolutely. So Diane, through this transition, you retired from the police department, and you started doing your, these empowering things. You've got a whole lineup of amazing things that you're doing for people. So share with us what you're doing now, how you're empowering people, and how people, what you do to let people know, hey, I got your back. I want to teach you the skills. I want to show you what you need to know so you can walk with confidence through these circumstances.
Oh, thanks, Vicki, for asking. I've been through kind of my journey since I retired from the department. I have one of the things I coined when I was working, because I've been literally in thousands of homes. And so I coined something called the clutter to drama ratio, that the more clutter you have in your space, the more drama you have in your relationship, in your mindset, things that are not working. So one of the things I really support women with is not only their physical clutter, but their mental clutter and standing in their power. Really, when I was talking about the COP, about having more confidence and optimism and power, I really think that we do get nudged off the path. There are things, and no matter where we're at with it, we can always get back on. And so I really do focus on women, being strong, being safe, and being seen. I help them anywhere from, I think all women need to have 3 moves to be able to have self-defense, to be able to take care of themselves. No problem, right? Because when you have that, I really believe you actually don't have to use it, because you walk differently in the world when you know that you can take care of yourself. Right. And I really think that's an important aspect to empower women with that. So I believe we all come in the world with that power within us. And there's just things that erode that, in life in different ways. And so I have retreats where it's, reset your power, to really learn those things. There's 4 different levels of power. If it's a physical space, I've got my Clutter to Calm Academy. And really, I want to start speaking more, like I said, to, corporations and to sororities, and just really getting out there so that women can reclaim that power, that they can really stand in that, and to integrate more, that it makes everyone feel safe. When you feel safe and congruent and confident in yourself, it really radiates into everyone else. So I've got, all of these things. You can, look on DianeHalfman.com. one of the things I also love for people to do is there has to be awareness of what's working and not working in your life.
Definitely.
And so it's so important to know and have that pulse on where you're at, because it's not like I like saying life is not an on or off switch, it's a dimmer switch.
Right.
And when we know where we are in that, we can really celebrate the things that we're doing really well and the things that we maybe need some support in. And so I created the, liferesetquiz.com, and that's like a 2-minute quiz that people can take and you get the results back right away. And it just allows you to know, like, what's going on in my mindset, what's happening in my physical space. Am I taking care of myself? And just knowing what that is, sometimes just the awareness alone gives you kind of that, okay, I need to just make a little tweak here and there.
Right.
And that's usually what it is. It's a little tweak here and there.
Right. Yeah. Just nudge against back on course, adjusting, and that's what learning's all about. We tend to learn in little bite-sized pieces. And I think that's what you deliver. I know that you also have, you guys speak in, with other companies and stuff as well, don't you? You go in and
Yes.
try and help with some different things. Like I said, we want to know, I know my listeners, and by the way, thank you guys for being here. If you haven't shared out the broadcast yet, I hope you will hit that share button. And those of you who are, if you are watching live, come into the Get Vocal room. I'm trying to focus my time and attention here on Diane instead of, monitoring all the comments, but come into getvokl.com and you guys can actually ask the questions. If you are listening to this on iTunes or Blog Talk Radio, Stitcher, we want you guys to be able to see the episode as well. So you can go to either my website, vickifitch.com, and on the Vicki Fitch live page, you'll see this is episode 20 of the Evict the Bully in Your Head podcast with Diane Halfman. So we thank you guys so much for being here. And again, please share it out. So Diane, tell us how, we have a few minutes left here. Just tell us how people, we have your website in the show notes and stuff, but what things can people be excited about connecting with you on, and what mission, what message do you want to share?
Well, my one big mission that I have is that it's so important to me so that women feel strong, safe, and seen, and so really about the women that I'm really working with, one-on-one in particular is, they've had something that has taken them off course, and to know that it doesn't matter how far off course you are, you can get back on track. I mean, I shared, with my story, it didn't feel like that was an easy path to get back to really standing in my own power and what that is. And I think sometimes women feel afraid to even say the word power, because of how other people are going to react to that. I specifically use that because it's important that we do stand in that and that it is sourced within ourselves. It's that internal power that we have. And, one of my favorite quotes is, Clement Watt, where it's take the first step, right? No more, no less. And the next step will be revealed. So many times when we're in a space where things aren't working, we feel like it's just so insurmountable and we're in the overwhelm and the chaos and the daily life that it feels like we can't give ourselves a breath to even do what we need to do. And we just need to take one action, just one thing, and just start moving in that direction. And, one of the things that came out, I don't know if you'd heard this, I think it was Bill Gates actually that made the quote about how busyness is the new stupid.
I did not hear that. I like that. I got to write that down.
That hit all of my clients right in the eyes, because really when you ask people how they're doing, what do they say? I'm busy. Busy is nothing. Like, busy is not productive. It's not focused. It's not actually moving you forward. Busy keeps you in the confusion. And it's another layer that we actually don't step into our brilliance. If we stay busy, and I've been guilty of this, where I've just had so much going on that I actually don't give myself a moment to really know what is the best direction for me. It feels like we're doing a lot of things and there's a lot more layers, but it's another way of people not to see our light and not stand into the direction that we're going, is be in this bubble of busyness. I've actively started taking a bunch of stuff off my calendar, really even talking, Carrie and I are also doing training about, we really want to change the dynamics. So actually, if any of the listeners know anyone in like chiefs or assistant chiefs and police departments, we're changing the communication between communities and the police department. And we're training on this in departments, because it all starts with communication and being able to have those conversations. And we really got really clear on when do we start business and when do we, stop this. We're not 24/7, even though we want to serve on a deep level. And especially women who, with their families, it's just like, we feel like we're always open, and it's so important to just recharge yourself and know that in your business, in your life, that you're the asset, right? And if you don't take care of yourself, then you can't give and can't do. Because think about, if you're gone, who's going to do all the stuff that you've been doing, right? And you've got to be able to take care of yourself to make these things happen. So I don't know if that was just one thing, but it's really, I'm really just bringing women back to who they are, right? Of really getting clear of where they've been taken off, where does all the muck, whether you're calling it busyness or overwhelm, and it's just scaling those things away so you can stand in your power, and really supporting women to step into their leadership and their power by taking care of themselves first.
Well, I am a big advocate of that, as you know. I mean, there are times, and I don't think, for those of you who are looking at Diane with blinders on, saying, you don't understand my life, I have to be busy. We get that. Like, there's times of what I call planned chaos. I personally did not intend to start my own publishing company with this 12 books, 12 months project, right? And so sometimes when things happen, you have a time of planned chaos, but to live in it and breathe in it and say, I thrive in chaos, it's not healthy for you. Right. Recognizing that you're in a situation, as long as you have an exit strategy for that situation. And that's where, time blocking. And if you guys have never done the Rockstar Guide to Getting It Done, get that course. It's designed to help you even get through those periods of planned chaos, but to structure out your day, something that's comfortable for you, where you do have me time. It's already scheduled in. You do have time for you and all the things that are important to you and to your family. So, I totally oxygen mask on first to go to the spa. As a matter of fact, I think Diane and I are going to have to hit the spa pretty soon. we need to have a spa day with our spa day, right?
That's right. We'll go live from the spa.
Well, I will. I'll even go live from the mud bath if we go over like to Glen Ivy or something. Like,
I'm totally good to do that.
Right? Yeah. See, we're not, well, I wouldn't say we're not proud, but I'm okay. You guys have seen me with no makeup on, hair up in a ponytail. Mud is fine. We'll go for the mud. So guys, I'm super excited that Diane came with us today. She's just an amazing lady. If you haven't ever connected with her, I recommend you go to her website, Diane Halfman, HALFMAN.com. And it's DIANE, by the way. So I know there's lots of different spelling these days, right? There are 2 N's and 1 I and 5 I's and 2 E's. Who knows? But anyway, DIANEHALFMAN.com. Go check out what she's got to offer you guys. I really do appreciate you guys being here. And I want to remind you that this 12 books, 12 months project, number 2 was Evict the Bully in Your Head. And that's what this podcast is about. I want you to get that book, especially if you're struggling with your self-esteem, with your relationships, with recognizing your own value. The You Are Enough campaign is designed to help you see that you see your worth no matter what, right? And part of this whole 12 books, 12 months series is for you to recognize, to become the best version of yourself and recognize your internal value, and to start to help other people recognize theirs as well. Diane has made a commitment with her spa life, with her COP, trying to show you how to take care of yourself, how to protect yourself, how to be confident without being cocky, to recognize who you are. So for those of you who are familiar with things that are going on in the school districts, if you have people that we can connect with so we can get more into the schools. We want to start with preschoolers, just so you guys know. I do preschools all the way up to college. But if we start making changes in the children, then we will grow a future generation of leaders and people that are more empathetic, they're kinder, and they recognize their value. So they won't accept unacceptable behavior. They will be stepping into their power, like what Diane's talking about. We want to help everybody who's here right now, but we want to start nurturing those levels in our kids so we grow up, so they'll grow up differently. So they'll grow up ready for that and not have to learn it after bad relationships or having, these things come that, that build that character for sure. I mean, Diane and I have both experienced that, but we're so grateful that you guys are here. And Diane, do you have any parting words before I sign off here? I mean, we're just, again, so blessed to have you.
Oh, thank you so much. I just want to say, I just want to just acknowledge you, Vicki. I mean, I love that you're having this conversation. This isn't necessarily a popular conversation that people want to have, to really, it's a vulnerable space. I don't want to share some of the things that I've experienced, right? It can feel like, wow, it's very vulnerable to be out and doing that. But it's so important that we do put voice to all of our different experiences, because it does allow us to say, you know what, that was my path. And, so any of the listeners where they're at, you may be on a maybe a dim part of your path, right? And just know that please plug into the communities. I think it's so important. This is what I love, the formats we have. Put something in the comments, send a message to Vicki or myself. Like, don't allow yourself to be alone in the world. Get the resources, reach out to somebody. It does get better.
Yes, it does. Hashtag it does get better. So guys, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. Again, this is episode 20 of the Evict the Bully. It's Vicki Fitch Live, Evict the Bully in Your Head podcast with Miss Diane Halfman. And I hope that you guys will continue being here. I do live stream every day at 6 p.m. to deliver value to you guys on money, mindset, and motivation. And if you want to check out the books, go to vickifitch.com/5K, and we'll have some more links in the information from Diane so you guys can connect with her directly. And until next time, I want to remind you, like I always do, to dream it, believe it, and achieve it. Ciao.